Oracle, we are going to learn about our topic number 7, that is properties of table. So moving on the properties of table. So there are some properties of the table. So what are these? Let's move on. So first properties, we will study about the tuples, then we will study about the attributes, then after that we will study the relations, domain, then in the next lectures, in this video of lecture, we will study about the primary key, foreign key, integrity rules. So what are these rules, what are the foreign key, how it is going to help in creating the table and designing all. So let's move on our first topic, that is tuple. So what do you mean by tuple? First question is that what do you mean by tuple? So let's move. So tuple is the term used in the Oracle. Now what is the meaning of the tuple? Is that collection of the data arranged in the row having different data type is called tuple. So collection of the data arranged in the row having different data type is called tuple. So I have example of this, that this is what we call tuple, because the collection of data, our data is S001 Amrit, and this is the contact. So this is what we call tuple. So all the record is the tuple. This is what we call tuple, because it is the collection of the data arranged in the row having different data types. So this is what we call tuples. Also, it is also called as a record, as we have talked here. This is what we call record, because it is that data having different data types, So this is what we call records, or in the terms of tuple, or in simple English term tuples, in a computer terms tuple. So each tuple represents the data of single entity. So a tuple represents the data of a single entity. So we can say that these represent us single entity. Each tuple represents single entity of the data. So we have studied about the tuples, and that is so important. Tuple is nothing but the collection of the data arranged in the row having different data type is called tuple. It is also called record. Each tuple represents the data of single entity. So moving on the next thing, that is attribute. Attribute is also so important. What we call it attribute, how we call it attribute, what is the meaning of attribute in the Oracle. So collection of the data arranged in the column. Collection of the data arranged in the column having same data type is called attribute. For example, let's look here. This is what we call attribute. So SID, SName, SContact, this is what we call attribute. So attribute is nothing but the column name. So attribute is nothing but a column name. It is also called field. So we can say that attribute is nothing but a column. So it will contain the collection of the data arranged in the column having same data type, because the column have a same data type. That if SID is like this, then it will store the data type like that. If the SName is like a character data type, so it will store all data type in the format of character data type. If the SContact in the format of a number, then it will store all the data type in the number format. So this is what we call columns or attributes. So moving on the next thing, that is the relation. So the combination of rows and column are called relation. Combination of rows and columns are relation. Now what do you mean by rows? The horizontal line is called rows and the vertical line is called column. horizontal line. So if I give you example, this is what we call rows and this is what we call column. So let's look here. Relation is nothing but the collection of the rows and columns. This is what we call column. Vertical line is called column, and this is what we call rows. Horizontal line is called rows. So collection of the rows and the column is called relation. Collection of the rows and column is called relation. So moving on the next thing that is so important, domain. So I think that you will arise some of the questions that what do you mean by domain? What is it? So value of attribute that follows the restriction or the constraint of that particular attribute of that particular column is called domain. So domain is nothing but the value of attributes that follows the restriction or the constraint on that particular attributes. So if I show you, then look at this thing. So this is the column or attribute. This is the column or the attribute, okay, and it has certain condition in it that it is the primary. It should be primary, means s will started with small s and followed by any character in it. So this is the restriction applied. So what we call it? Domain. So domain is nothing but the restriction applied on a particular column. The restriction applied on the particular column is what we call domain. So domain is nothing like anything, that it means that the restriction or the constraint applied on the particular column or attributes is domain. So it's very simple. Next, moving on the primary key, it is so important. Primary key, we will learn about the foreign key also, and the integrity rules, the rule that defines the integrity of the data. So primary key is the key attribute that is used to uniquely identify each records. So if I say that Amrit is identified its ID, so G is identified with its ID and Dilip is identified with its ID. So this is what through which all the data has been identified. So this is the primary key. So primary key is nothing but that unique value which identified the whole things in that. So this is what we call primary key. So primary key is the uniquely identify each records. Each record can be identified uniquely, so we call it as a primary key. So it should not accept null value because primary key is not going to be null. It contain and it must have to contain the values in it. So moving on the next thing, that is the foreign key. Foreign key, it is also important. Foreign key is also key attribute. Primary key is that key which is known as the master key, and the foreign key is that key which is also called a key attribute that hold collection of the data in the particular column. What the value of that column must exist or should be available in the primary key attribute of the another table. And this is what the restriction that is implement on the foreign key. That foreign key is also a key attribute. What it holds the collection of the data in a particular column. What the value of that column must exist on the primary key table. So this is how the foreign key defines. So and foreign key can be of null type, means it can accept null values also. So moving on the next thing, that is the integrity rules, and this is very important. So one by one we will learn about the domain integrity, entity integrity and differential integrity. Integrity rules, this is very important. Domain integrity. So what do you mean by domain integrity? So domain integrity is the value of the particular column that must follow the restriction on the condition that on the particular columns. As we have studied about the domain, that it is that value of the particular column that must follow the restriction or the condition on that particular columns. So let's look at that. So what we are studying here, that it should be primary. This is the condition applied on the attributes or the particular columns. So this is what we call domain. So domain is nothing but the condition or the restriction applied on the particular column or the attributes. So this is what we call domain. So in integrity rules, domain follows these things. What is in integrity? That is, in domain integrity, the value of the particular column must follow the restriction on the condition of that particular columns. So it will follow that the conditions, and it must have to follow the conditions. So this is what we call domain integrity. Next, moving on the entity integrity, and this is also important. Entity integrity. In this integrity rules, each table has a primary key attributes. Means every table has a primary key in it. That is to use the identify each tuples, and each tuple means each row uniquely, and it should not accept the null value. So entity integrity follow the primary key attributes. So we can say that the primary key cannot be null value, and also each row can be identified uniquely. So this is what the entity integrity rules says us. Next, moving on the referential integrity, and that is the foreign key, we can say. The value of the column can be repeat more than one time in the existing table, but that value must be exist on the primary key attribute in the another table. So this is all about the referential integrity. We call it as a foreign key. So referential integrity is that rules which says us that the value of the column can be repeat more than one time in the existing table. Means I am using that table, and the value of the column or the row can repeat, what that value must be exist on the master table, that is the primary key table attribute in the another table. So this is what the referential integrity says us. So in this video we have studied about the properties of the table and the integrity rules that is going to help you in the oracles. So in the next video we will learn more about the oracles and its topics. So I hope you like this, and thanks for watching. धन्यवाद.